I'm Bobby Brill, and this is Creative Mind. In this episode in our continuing series on the fashion industry, I sit down with Damion Le Cappelain, and I'm doing my best to pronounce his name, so I hope I don't butcher it. But Damion is a shoe designer and the head of the shoe design and accessories program at the Academy of Art University. And Damion has a really cool story because he didn't start out as a fashion designer. He started out as a biology major. And that's something very important to think about, is as you're in school and as you attend art school, you're going to meet people from a diverse background who probably started somewhere very different than you. Maybe they started in the military. Maybe they started in engineering and wanted to become a sculptor. Maybe they come from a different country as you. That's one of the great things about an art education is the diversity helps make you better. And you can change your career at any point by what you feel works best to fit you. So please take a listen to our interview with Damion Le Cappelain. And if you are excited about what you hear, please hit subscribe on whatever device you're listening to so that we can make sure that you never miss an episode of Creative Mind Podcast. So here you go. Let's kind of go back to the beginning, long before we get into the Academy of Art stuff and the shoe stuff. What was your passion before it became shoes?
Actually, my passion before shoes was music. I worked in the music industry for a few years. So I left university. I originally did a degree in biology, believe it or not. And as soon as I came out of university, I just landed this job working for a record company as a label manager, dance music, sort of electronic music. Over the time while I was doing that, I was increasingly getting frustrated with artists that I was using to design the artwork, packaging for CDs and records and, you know, all the marketing material. And I kind of fell into doing a lot of that artwork myself. And then I started doing some design work or artwork for a UK band called Basement Jaxx. I don't know if you've heard of them.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, of course.
So I was doing their record covers and their website and all sorts of stuff for them.
Okay.
And I got so busy with that and doing other music industry stuff, artwork, that I stopped doing the music and just concentrated on the artwork. So then I, in effect became a graphic designer. And I was doing that for a few years. But does that lead into your next question?
Well, how did you land a job in music with a biology degree? What was that conversation like?
Well, it was the mid-90s. In London, there's a huge music clubbing scene. So I was organising gigs and, club nights at the university. And I was DJing and kind of in that scene. And a friend of mine got a record deal with this record label in Rome in Italy. And I went to Rome with him to record this album that he was doing. And I met the label manager there. And we got chatting and, we struck up a relationship and he started sending me records and stuff. And I went to Italy a few times to events there. And then he eventually offered me a job setting up a record label, setting up an office in London for this Italian record label. So it was, purely circumstantial, like most jobs in the record industry. It was like right place, right time.
Sure.
And I was 24 at the time. I had absolutely no music business experience other than, putting on events and stuff.
But single, no real ties, can get on a plane and go somewhere and not.
Well, that's right. Obviously the money was rubbish. The lifestyle was good at the time. Like I say, I didn't have kids, the money didn't matter. It was about going out, have a good time and the love of music, as it were, Like most people in the music industry, they only do it for a few years. Realise how cutthroat it is and where it's, and the money's rubbish.
Yeah.
And doing the graphic design was more lucrative and, more stable.
But even if you were a biology major and you were still, you went to graphic design, were you raised with kind of a background in the arts, or how did?
No, I not really. God, the closest thing I had to art was doing graffiti, in the 80s, graffiti art on paper, not on walls.
Okay. They've been painted over by now, you can admit to that.
Yeah, I did art classes, and in England, before we go to university, we do these things called A-levels. you have to have a certain number of A levels and grades to progress into doing a degree. And I did product design as an A level. I didn't.
Oh, really?
I don't think I got a particularly great grade for it. But I've always kind of been interested in the arts and being creative.
Being creative. Okay.
Yeah. But then I've always loved, science and biology in particular. So, that was my leaning in terms of doing a degree. But, when I graduated, I thought, do I really want to be working in the lab? Just,
right,
with Petri dishes and pipettes and just doing...
And a lot of math.
I mean, that's just... I couldn't see it,
And then, so you're doing the music stuff, you're doing graphic design, and then you were saying, boom, it's sneakerhead time.
Right. So, I've always had a thing. Well, back then, for a long time, had a thing about sneakers. I was really into hip hop.
So explain that to me, because what does a sneakerhead mean?
Well, I mean, now it means something different to what it was before. Before, there wasn't that many sneakers around. So when something new came out, it was quite a big deal, right? Now it's all about all these different crazy color combinations, getting this particular unique color combination they've only made 2,000 of or something. And really I was more into the design of sneakers rather than having this particular rare sneaker. I totally kind of fell out of love with sneakers.
Really?
When I started making shoes, I realised what was involved with the making and the materials and the process. My love changed from sneakers into dress shoes. More of the kind of the craft, the high-end craft and development of shoes. And, I realised that, sneakers are made in a factory in seconds, right? There's not a lot of craft in it versus a really well-made men's dress shoe like an Oxford or a Derby.
Was there a kind of a change in how you were living, or was it just you were always looking at those shoes going, that's something different?
Well, what you mean? Do you grow out of liking sneakers and grow into more something more?
Is that
more grown up, like a dress shoe? I think so. Yeah. But like I say, at the same time, I learned more about how sneakers are made as well as shoes are made. And I realised that, I loved the craftsmanship, of making a pair of shoes. That's not really involved in making sneakers. Sneakers are kind of glued together, stitched and glued together in seconds in a factory.
So what was then the shoe? Like you said that, when you finally started looking at real shoes and how the craftsmanship and the making of it, what was that turning point? Was there a particular shoe or?
There was one brand in particular that really used to catch my eye called Karel Christian Powell. He's an Austrian designer, and he makes very expensive shoes, and they're very, he's a very experimental designer. He doesn't work in the normal kind of fashion cycle. He doesn't do, 2 collections a year. He just makes boots and leather jackets as and when, and in the stores they've got this kind of open order on stuff that he's made. So suddenly this stuff will drop into the store, and his work's very interesting. And I always loved these boots that he made, and I always thought, I'm not going to pay $3,000 for these.
Right.
I can't pay that. I can't afford it.
Sure.
How about if I could make them? But there's always like a thought bubbling around in my mind, and I was never going to sort of put it into effect.
You're not going to be a Daniel Day-Lewis and just go.
I had a Daniel Day-Lewis moment, right?
Okay.
Where, I didn't go and hide in Italy, in the mountains somewhere. I didn't do that. I think I was just out one day and I bumped into someone. We got chatting. It was just in a cafe actually, and we got chatting. She told me what she did, and she said she was at London College of Fashion doing a footwear design degree, and I didn't even know that was a thing, And we got chatting, and I thought, wow, that's incredible. I'd love to do that, So I made the inquiries and found out that LCF, we call it LCF, short for London College of Fashion, they did short evening courses, and so I enrolled in 2 of those, and it was like one night a week for 10 weeks, making something really simple, just like a flat ballerina. And I absolutely loved it. And I thought, you know what, I want to do this forever. I want to do this full time as a studying. So I quit the day job, as they say, the graphic design, and went back to school.
So when you're going to LCF and starting to get into the design of shoes, what was the process for you to then go to the Royal College of Art? What was that push?
That's a good question. Well, when I was at LCF, because Royal College is a really prestigious school in London, and very, very hard to get into. And I've heard of it, and I didn't know anyone who'd been there, but I know a couple of students from LCF had graduated and had got places at RCA, but I knew it was difficult. And I did want to do a master's. I assumed that I wouldn't get into the RCA, and had interviews at LCF to do the MA there. And then actually one of the instructors at LCF, who also instructed at RCA, said to me, "Why didn't you apply for the RCA?" And I said, "Well, I just don't really see myself getting in there. I don't have that much experience. I've only, I don't really have an extensive portfolio of footwear work or fashion work." And she said, "Well, you've got your graphic design portfolio. They'll probably look at that." So I had an interview at the RCA, which went really terribly. I was convinced that I wasn't going to get in there. I remember the tutor during the interview, and there was a panel of 4 people interviewing me, and the head of menswear asked me a question. I honestly didn't understand a word he said. I mean, it was so wordy and like way over my head. And I kind of winged it and said some answer, and I could tell I wasn't really hitting target. And I waffled it on a bit longer, and he was just looking at me really weird, and then I just kind of trailed off. And then one of the other people on the panel asked me a question, and I answered, and he said, "Well, that's exactly what I just asked you." And I said, I thought, you didn't really put it in that simplistic kind of words, did you? So, it was a terrible interview.
But you get in, and that's where it becomes just shoes full time. That's it. You're done. It's shoes forever at that point.
Yeah.
There's definitely kind of this idea when you're a fashion student where you go to school to learn how to make a garment, and then you're done. You're off into tech packs, but it sounds like with shoes, you kind of were always then working into the craft of it, because it's more craft than design. Or
you can, when you graduate, you're probably going to go into design. You're probably not going to be making any shoes.
Okay.
It'd be very rare for you to be making shoes, unless you went into a very traditional kind of bespoke shoemaking environment. There's not much of that going on. But it is going on obviously in London, in Milan and Paris, and some of the major cities in Europe. Not really happening so much in the US.
But is that like the old school kind of apprenticeship approach, or is it actual people who've gone to school and opened up a shop?
In London, I mean it's more of an apprenticeship. I mean, a lot of people graduate from RCA and do start off doing their own thing, their own bespoke shoemaking company, or a studio company making small batches of shoes. But it's important as a shoe designer to know how these things are made. It's only going to benefit you to be able to have that experience on making shoes. It's going to make you a much better designer. So although you spend 3 years doing a degree where you're making shoes, it's invaluable experience when you leave and you start only designing shoes.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, because unfortunately, in the UK, there's not a lot of footwear industry, and in the States, there's not a lot of footwear industry. Or rather, the making industry. That's all happening in China, in Italy, Portugal, Spain, and the people working in those factories, they've not done a degree in footwear.
So when you were in school then, and you had said like when you were just beginning, you had done a ballerina shoe. What was like the track that you're going through and deciding to do men's footwear? Was men's footwear always the first goal, or was it kind of
Yeah.
something that came about?
Yeah. I've always been interested in footwear, men's footwear more than women's footwear. But the ballerina is probably the most simple construction there is. So even though it's a women's shoe, it's something that's you learn to do first that gives you all those skills that you can build on. And everything I did at school back in the 90s is what I'm doing, what I've implemented into courses at AAU now. It's the same process and the same order of, learning these constructions. So you start off with a ballerina, the simple construction, or maybe a sandal actually. Then you do a high heel wedge, with straps. Then you progress to something to a lace up shoe. And that's when you can do men's or women's.
So tell me about the idea with all the leather shoes, because I mean, as I've seen shoe prices and bought boots over the years, and everyone, there's the ostrich, and then there's the red. I mean, what is the difference between some of these leathers? Why one over the other? Is it a look, or is it a feel?
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination, looks, performance. Or I mean, are you talking about leather specifically?
Yeah.
Specifically, yeah. So, well, you know how what it feels like when you put on a really nice, expensive pair of shoes. They just feel great, don't they? You slip your foot in, they feel great. The inside lining is made of calf skin, not cotton. That feels good. Over time, the leather breaks down and becomes more supple. That will only happen if it's a good quality leather. Otherwise, with a cheap leather, it just kind of cracks and gets dry. It's so much nicer using good quality leather when you're making shoes. And some leathers are easier to use than others. Some are, stretch in the right way. Because when you're making a shoe, you're having to stretch leather over a shoe last. There's a lot of manipulation going on there. You're stretching it a flat piece of leather over a curve, and you need it to stretch the right amount, not too much, not too little. So you find that, like horse leather, for example, cordovan leather is really nice to use. It's a lot more expensive, but it's really, really nice to use, and it wears really nicely and lasts forever.
So for you then, when you started doing shoes, what was the goal as far as business-wise or career-wise for you when it came to becoming a shoe designer? What was that? What was the product that you wanted to create?
I wanted to do menswear. I was really into, I had a certain aesthetic at the time. And so, I wanted to work for brands that had that similar aesthetic. So when I my aim was always to graduate and try and work for a company like that. When I graduated, I ended up working for a company called Hudson as a menswear shoe designer. They didn't really have that aesthetic, to be honest. They're more sort of, brown and black, mid-price shoes. And there's quite a nice brand. They had quite a nice product. It wasn't Rick Owens, though, unfortunately, and that's where I really wanted to go. Okay. So yeah, being a menswear designer, that's what I wanted. That was always my intention.
And so what does that mean? Is that you're going to be designing a line, designing collections? For somebody who's just kind of getting into the fashion side, what does that look like as a career? What is it you're actually doing?
You're working on collections, maybe 2 or maybe 3 times a year, probably 2. You're going out on research trips, so basically glorified shopping trips where you just go into stores and look at products, secretly take photos of them if you can. Get back to an office, spend a few days sketching. You liaise with the director and you pick out certain shoes. You've been given some kind of brief, probably. Mm-hmm. Then with those designs, you're sort of editing them down. Those sketches, you're editing them down to a collection. Then you're drawing or rendering them more accurately and, to better scale, etc. You're sending those to a factory. You're going to a factory to check the samples as they come out. Then you're, marking up the samples, then they get resampled, and then the cycle starts from the beginning again.
Well, what was your first factory visit like?
That's a good question, because I clearly remember going to this footwear factory in Portugal, and they used to produce, well, they still do, produce the shoes for All Saints, which is quite a big UK brand. They do have stores in the US. And, I'm a big lover of All Saints, the brand. I like what they do. And I remember being in this factory and seeing these shoes flying off the machines and just ending up in a big pile on the floor. And there must have been probably a pile of 100 shoes, like a pyramid or mountain of shoes. And, before that, I've never really seen this happen. I kind of come from making shoes, taking like weeks to make one pair of shoes and the craft and everything, and then suddenly you see these shoes flying off in minutes and then just in a pile on the floor. And the magic little bit was kind of like ruined forever. When you see something mass produced for the first time, it's it's quite a thing. And when it's a brand that you like and you've often I used to go into All Saints a lot just to check out how did they do that, and how did they do that scene, and thinking that's just amazing. How did they do that? And then I see it just a pile on the floor in the factory. Yeah. So All Saints kind of ruined for me.
For the Academy of Art, shoes in fashion have pretty much started with you now.
Yeah. So it's a new thing. I came here 3 years ago. I spent a year ordering equipment, setting up the studios, writing the classes. We launched the footwear program, Footwear and Accessories program 2 years ago. So we don't have anyone in senior year yet. It's all a new thing. And we do everything from the design to the making, shoes, bags, and millinery, hat making too. And it's new to the AAU, a whole new thing in the School of Fashion. Designing and making shoes, is quite a unique thing. Traditionally, students have gone into footwear design jobs usually from industrial design, some from fashion, but they've not really had much footwear design experience. And this degree is given them that. So if you have a degree in footwear design, you have an edge over the other students that are normally being recruited by Adidas and Nike, whatever. Because drawing, you can learn to draw shoes yourself. It's a pretty simple, small object to draw, but there's loads of little things that you don't know about until you actually learn how to make shoes and you have more focused tuition in designing shoes. So, having a degree and having experience is only going to be a good thing if you really seriously want to go into footwear design.
And how are the students dealing with it? Is it opening up a lot of new avenues for the students? Are they finally seeing something different as opposed to just doing garments?
They are, yeah. So, I get a lot of students in fashion just taking footwear classes as an elective, so just a one-off class, and they're saying, if I'd known, I would have done footwear if I'd known, if this had happened like 3 years ago. Yeah, and I say, well, sorry, you could always come back and do another degree or an MFA. And the great thing is that, I have someone from fashion coming in and they've already got a lot of design experience. They might be working on their senior collection and they can use that. They can sort of bring that into their work, their process when they're shoemaking. So if they're textiles, they can use fabrics that they've developed in textiles and make a boot or a shoe, whatever, or bag in the fabric that they printed. Industrial design students, they've come in and, they've already had some footwear experience from the class they've done in industrial design. And then they're able to actually make what they've designed in, previous class. So, it's good for the students to come in and with this kind of with an aesthetic already developed in other ways.
Is footwear design and bag design, is it a different, or what is the different skill set for somebody who's thinking about fashion as I want to work in fashion, and then they start going into shoes and bag? What are some of those skills and some of those paths they really need to focus on that may be different from garment design?
I think you've got to, firstly, you've got to consider, do you just love, do you love shoes? Is it just you love shoes and you love shopping for shoes? Or do you really want to actually make and learn the process and have the patience to make shoes? Because it's not quick. There's no instant gratification. It can take 2 weeks to make a shoe, and there's a lot of nailing, hammering, sanding, gluing. Your hands get messed up. It's more like furniture making than it is dressmaking or making garments. So you've got to be prepared to get your hands messed up. You've got to get cuts and bruises and like cramp in your hands. And there's a lot of steps. I mean, it's crazy how many steps there are and how many different materials you use and components. So you've got to be patient. You can't expect to get it right the first time. It takes many, many attempts to get it right. So you've got to be patient. I think if you go onto the Vans website, you can design a shoe. You can design your own Vans, customize your own Vans, right? You just use your mouse and just, and then it's done, made. It's not like that, And then also the design. I mean, that's the making side. But the design, shoes, they have to fit your foot, right? It's not like a garment which can be any kind of size or silhouette and volume. The shoe fits your foot. So there's limitations with the design, And it's not a particularly big area. It's not a particularly big thing that you're designing either. So I think a lot of people come in and go, oh yeah, I'm going to design some shoes. I love shoes. And then when it actually comes to it, they realize it's actually quite difficult.
That very precious work or that very simple, intricate design thing gets lost on a lot of people when the cuff of your pants covered up, or it's the backside of the shoe that you don't really see.
Yeah.
And then you have to explain that to them. It's like, maybe which area do you focus on and which area do you want to really devote your skill set to?
I think the answer to your question is, really you need to kind of examine what is involved in shoemaking and shoe designing, and it not be like just sort of a flippant thought, oh, I want to design shoes. Well, I want to make shoes because I love shoes. You've got to be really dedicated and focused.
That's going to lead me up to the three big questions we ask everybody is, that first day of school when they've decided, okay, I'm going to make shoes. What is something that a student really needs to understand about the process?
You know what you're letting yourself in for. Yeah, that's it really. Know what you're letting yourself in for, know your capabilities. Are you someone who can make things? Or do you have experience making stuff already? You've got to be resourceful. You've got to have all the right tools and equipment. You've got to be prepared to invest in buying all that stuff, all those tools. And you've got to be patient. If you're not patient, if you think this is going to happen in a couple of days, it's not. It takes weeks to make a product, and be prepared to remake it over and over again. I mean, that's not first day stuff, is it? But that's basically.
But that's good first day stuff too. That you're going to be buying a lot of equipment.
Yeah.
I know for a lot of people in art school, it's like, well, I remember going through school and it was, you would take your painting class and it's like, okay, you got to buy all these brushes, you got to buy these oils, you got to buy the canvas stretcher, and you got to do this and do this and do that. Like, I don't really like that. Or you're going to work on a computer. Well, that's easy. It's a piece of software. Or, oh, I'm going to be, an industrial design. So, oh, now you're going to learn how to weld. And you're like, nah. Which I do wish I would have learned how to weld. That would have been cool.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, that does make sense where, you're investing in a craft.
Yes.
As opposed to just an artistic desire.
Yeah.
So then the next one is like the day after they graduate, what's life look like for them now? What is it they need to be thinking about?
They need to be getting straight into the job market. They should be applying for jobs. Don't wait. Don't. I mean, okay, have a little break. You've just been working hard for 3 or 4 years. Have a little break. But, there's so many people graduating. There's so much competition for jobs. You need to get in there pretty quickly.
And is that just sending your portfolio around, or what are some of the things that may be a little different when it comes to shoe design as opposed to something else?
It was the same, same in fashion. You need to be contacting recruitment people within companies. I would say that you need to be getting those contacts before you graduate, to be honest. In fact, you need to be contacting them and saying, look, here's my portfolio. I'm graduating in 2 or 3 months. I'm looking for this job. And I get the feeling that companies, if you've been graduated for a year and then you come along and, say, well, I'm looking for a job, they're going to be a little bit less interested. They're really into people that are freshly graduated too.
Good. Okay. Interesting. That's a good point. That if you've waited too long, you're kind of out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah. And, take even if it's not a company or brand that you have much of affinity with, you've got to take these opportunities. Well, I remember graduating with people who got offered jobs and they turned them down because they thought, well, this is not really my kind of aesthetic. And then, they couldn't find the job working for a company with their aesthetic. And then those jobs that they originally got offered were gone, and they were then out of work for ages. And, and they regret, obviously they regret that. So you've got to take these opportunities as they come, because you don't have to be there. You can be there for 2 years and just get the experience, and then go to somewhere where you have, more of a connection with.
Right, because there is that idea when you're doing something creative. It's like, well, you're learning from somebody for 2 years. You're not giving up everything you love to go work at Target. You're learning how Target works, and they probably make a lot more money than you do. So let's figure out their step. Yeah.
And also say, I hear a lot of students say, "Oh, I'm going to graduate and then I'm going to start my own brand." And I really advise not to do that. It's really important that you get out there and work for a few years first to get the experience. There's so much to learn. There's no way that you can graduate and just set up your own brand. There's so much for you to kind of experience and learn first. You're not going to succeed doing your own brand. I mean, there's exceptions, obviously.
Sure. But that's also a lot of luck too, because there's the brand. If you're setting up your own brand, I mean, that's the whole business side, and then you got to make something good.
There's so much. It's particularly in footwear, where like I say, there is so many components and processes, and when a pair of shoes is made, it's not just one factory involved. There's a factory making the sole. There's a factory making the heel. You've got leather suppliers. You've got maybe a different factory doing the finishing, and then you've got packaging. There's so many elements all coming together. You soon realise when you work in the industry how much is involved, and you can't possibly understand that until you've worked in the industry. So to go and start up your own brand, I just don't know how you'd be able to do it without any of that prior experience. And then there's obviously marketing and all the business side of things, Yeah. Having money to burn and burn and burn and burn. Yeah.
And that sets up that last question that is, something I wish somebody had told me many, many, many times was, that first day on your first job, how do you not get fired?
Well, I guess there's the obvious ones, like don't turn up late, dress appropriately, don't be on your phone every 5 minutes. I'm sure that's happened. I mean, that wasn't an option when my first job, but I'm sure that's the thing now. And and God, turn up and be patient. It's tough, isn't it, for the first 6 weeks when you're working for a company. It's probably not what you thought it was going to be, because you kind of built up all these expectations. Your first job, and then you turn up and you're probably doing something quite menial. You've got to turn up you've got to be positive, just stay positive, and meet everyone as well. Oh, these are the things that you should do. Not your question is what shouldn't you do.
Well, that's a little bit of both. I mean, that first job you get, it's kind of like, oh, no one prepared me really for having to talk to people.
I mean, it doesn't really answer your question, but I do remember being told this at college, and in hindsight, I realised how important that was, and that is to, make friends with everybody, make as many connections as you can. Because you never know in the future, you might bump into that person again. So you don't want to make any enemies. But it's so useful making these connections. And when you start working for a new company, it's really important for you to go around and meet people and remember their names, because they might be useful to you in the future, And everyone likes you remembering their name, don't they? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's very true. Because it is one of those things where it's like, you are gonna, if you're gonna leave in 2 years, or you want to see yourself leaving in 2 years, you're probably not the only one. So you've got to make friends.
It's big, particularly to a big company like Target. In a small company, this is the big difference between small and big companies. When you work for a big company like Target, you're probably just doing mainly one task, okay, until you progress into another department, or you go up. But in a smaller company, you're probably a bit more hands-on and doing a few different tasks. So it's important for you to meet people in the company. You go around and you say hi to everyone. I always think that's a good advice for the first day in a job.
So future of shoes, are we getting into something other worldly, or is for leather shoes, is it have we peaked, or what?
No, we've not peaked. I mean, you could say we peaked, and then suddenly we have all these outrageously huge oversized sneakers happening. They've been on trend now for 3 years, these really oversized massive sneakers, or rather the sole is oversized. And they're really fun, and who would have seen that coming like 5 or 6 years ago? But There they are. But I still feel that shoes and sneakers could get even more outrageous. There's still more scope for more craziness. So no, it's not the end yet. We're still going.
Well, that's good. That's good. Anything you want to promote, or anything that you want to really point students towards?
Well, obviously, the footwear and accessories course at AAU, come and make some shoes and bags. Say to all AAU students, you don't need to be enrolled in the program to take a footwear class.
Oh, awesome.
You can take classes as an elective, and you can come in and take one class, and you'll be making shoes, and you'll be making sneakers, or you'll be making bags. In fact, in the bag making class, you make 5 different constructions of bags.
Wow.
So you come in and do one class, you'll get to make some products.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's
and
awesome.
If you love it enough, then you can leave whatever major you're doing and do accessories instead.
So some great information about shoe design and accessory design. A really actually fascinating tangent in the world of fashion design, because it has a lot to do with craft, math, if you're into that, believe it or not, engineering, and beautiful design. And if you want to find out more about the program, definitely check out the website, because as he said, this track does not require you to be in the fashion department. So if you're a fashion student at the school, you can take it. If you're a student at the school in any other department, you can take it. And most importantly, if you just want to take a single class at the Academy of Art University, you can take this one, just like many others. Because as more and more art and design career opportunities arise, employers are always on the hunt for the next generation of talented and equally skilled creative professionals. At Academy of Art University, you will get these work-ready skills that employers want. You can study on-site in downtown San Francisco and, of course, anywhere in the world with our online programs. To request more information about our 40-plus areas of study in art and design, including game development, fashion design, photography, animation, UX design, just visit our website at academyart.edu/creativemind for more information. And thank you for listening.